Welcome to Kardec Radio. While you wait for our program to begin, check our new site. It's Kardec Flix, where Spiritism is just a click away. Also, check our publisher, Kardec Publisher, and its first 6 books. Each one is a journey to inner empowerment and love. Kardec Radio, where we nourish ourselves daily.
Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio and the Inner Journey with Paul and Stephen. This amazing book that comes, as Emmanuel describes through Chico Xavier in the preface. This book is not about storytelling. It's not about another biography about Paul of Tarsus, the great apostle of Christianity. It's about yours and mine, our relationship with Jesus. He's the governor of the planet. All the masters of ancient times have come. They have come for this purpose. They came precisely to fulfill a greater program, which is nonetheless the inner journey inside of us. To discover our divine affiliation, to unfold our divine potential. And in Saul of Tarsus and his transformation, we have also an invitation for ourselves. You know, sometimes you're feeling weary, tired, tormented. Why? Because we're resisting the call to what we came to do in this life. We have come here not for the comfort zone, but for the true sacrifices of what? Of our ego. Yes, sometimes we have a dream, the dream of becoming whatever you want. Maybe the prettiest, the wealthiest, the smartest. I don't know why people dream of these things, but anyhow, people dream of these things day in, day out. And then life says, no, you were not born for this. It doesn't matter. What matters is how much love you can give. How much understanding you can practice. How much forgiveness, how much compassion, how much good you distribute. After all, we are co-creators with the creator of all goodness in this universe. And if we're suffering, it's because we're not in sync with God. Because when we are, we may have challenges, of course, but we will rejoice like the first Christians did. They were suffering. They were about to be sacrificed. And yet they were singing. And yet they could envision the continuity of life. In that line of thought, after more than 20 years of non-stop traveling, disseminating the teachings of the good news, the gospel, Paul of Tarsus now receives a letter from James, who is in Jerusalem, and said, they expelled Simon Peter from here. They allowed me to stay because I still observe the Mosaic laws and the rituals, but they want you, Paul. Can you come? And he comes. So we are in chapter 8 of part 2 of the book Paul and Stephen. And here, Paul of Tarsus is already in Jerusalem. He is back there, and he doesn't stay at the church for safety purposes. He is at one of the Christians' homes, Manasseh, and they are there when he meets with James. You remember, James and Paul, they were on different pages of life. regarding how to be a follower of the Christ. While Paul of Tarsus was firm to understand that everybody, no matter if they were Jewish or not, they deserved the opportunity to know of these teachings. On the other hand, we have here James, who took care of this transition from Judaism to Christianity. He was more orthodox. He absorbed some of the traditions, and many of the traditions we're going to see nowadays in the Catholic Church, in some Protestant churches, they come from those Judaic traditions since James' time. When we come to Spiritism, it's more of what Paul of Tarsus wanted to do. Clear, pure, like Jesus proclaimed to us, without images, without rituals, without any external features. So Paul of Tarsus, he sees James, and he's, both are already in their almost 50 to 60 years of age. So they are more mature. They recognize in each other that both of them have been diligent in their own way. And Paul of Tarsus listened to James extremely moved, possessor of a luminous evangelical knowledge. Paul of Tarsus understood that the time had come to bear witness to his devotion to the Master. He observes, first and foremost, he needs to sacrifice, because for the peace of the Christian church, the Pharisees at the synagogue propose that Paul of Tarsus, together with 4 poor men, go to the temple. They sacrifice themselves in terms of some penitence in front of everybody, which is kind of humiliating, plus pay a large sum of money that actually Paul of Tarsus doesn't have at hand right now, though he always works. He gave it all to Peter, but the church in Jerusalem, says James, will cover it up. All he needs to do is to save the church. And then, do you think Paul of Tarsus is asking, like we would, why me? No. Why doesn't he ask? Because he knows why he is doing this. He is the one that started the persecution. He is the one that inflamed the Pharisees 20 plus years earlier. Yes, almost 30 years from that moment, he was the one. So now he's like, yeah, I have to repair it. I have to expiate. So let's pause for a second to talk about this moment in our lives. We make a mistake. Is it enough just to realize that we made a mistake? No. Repentance is vital, but it's the first step. Then we need to go through the suffering, the consequences of those actions, and only time will heal, but we need to resign ourselves, to surrender. And once we do it, then we're going to repair. Third level. Who says that? Kardec. In the book Heaven and Hell, he is the one that is telling us that we need to do those 3 steps in the ladder of our regeneration. Paul of Tarsus understood he had to sacrifice. So what is to sacrifice? It's to give up something. I'm going to give you the definition, dictionary definition. To give up something that is valuable to you in order to help others. So in this case, Paul needs to sacrifice. He could have stayed far away and said, forget about it, but he's going to help others who are in need. He's going to save the church by sacrificing himself, allowing himself to be humbled by that scenario. And he does. He knows, as Emmanuel says here in this very passage, he knows that it's his time to give his testimonial. He needs to bear witness of everything. And he says, yes, I'll do it. And James says to him, many times the Master taught us in Galilee that the best witness is in dying slowly, day by day, for the victory of his cause. That is why he affirmed that God does not desire the death of the sinner, because it is in extinguishing our everyday caprices that we find the luminous stairway for ascending to his infinite love. It's how to die so that our ideas may be transmitted and flourish in others. These are James' words, which really gave Paul of Tarsus a new perspective. Not that he didn't know, but he looked at James at that moment, someone who seemed to be an adversary to him, and said, wow, he changed. And he said even more. He now understood that life demands understanding more than knowledge. Let's stop for these two major ideas. One, die slowly every day. What is dying in us? You remember how many lives we have lived? So many lives. In all those lives, we created conditionings, good and bad. Those conditionings that led us to addictions, the addiction of gossiping, the addiction of drama, the addiction of defiance, the addiction of rebelliousness, the addiction of sadness, the addiction of laziness. Actually, laziness leads to addictions. So you and I are here, first and foremost, to understand that daily we have an invitation to let go of those, to counter condition ourselves with the good. There's no way to stop something we're doing wrong by simply doing nothing. If we want to reverse an addiction, we need to create new habits, healthy habits. So if you smoke and drink, now you start a diet, you start hydrating more with water, you work out every day, and those procedures and more will provide to us an opportunity to grow stronger. In those new habits, I already countered those bad habits. But remember, everything begins in the mind. I can eat all the healthy food I can, but if I don't change the mental thoughts, the mental patterns that were triggering bad eating behaviors, they're going to come back. So I need to observe myself, be a scientist of myself, investigate, who am I? Why am I feeling this? I know I would like to be validated by eating a donut. I will find no validation. I will only stimulate some pathways in my brain that will be a temporary gratification reward, but then soon after, they're gone. And I'll have worse consequences because then I'll be changing my metabolism and I'll be inflamed and healthier and everything's going to be worse. So it's not worthwhile to indulge in any whim we may have. We need to raise our awareness of who we truly are, our connection with our spirit protectors, the guardian angels, and thus reinforce inside of us the need to do the good, to align ourselves with the laws of God. So Paul of Tarsus now reconciles with James. James reconciles with Paul of Tarsus. In this beautiful moment, in this sacrificial moment in Jerusalem, not only the church is healing, but Paul of Tarsus and James are also healing. And it requires understanding. Knowledge is not enough. So, do you have people in your life that you need to reconcile with? Who doesn't, right? It's time to think about that opportunity. How can we go there? How can we achieve this wonderful approach of love and come to terms with dissension in our lives? And only doing the good we can do this. And as we go on in this chapter, we're going to see the drama of Paul of Tarsus and 4 men entering the synagogue. The ignorance of the Pharisees of the time was so brutal that they felt they were not satisfied by seeing that humiliation. They wanted to kill Paul of Tarsus. Thanks to a Roman soldier, he is arrested, and now Claudio Lysias, a very important man who is saving him, he talks to Paul of Tarsus. And now we learn a new lesson. Paul of Tarsus' composure, his eloquence, his way of speaking, firm and convicted, opened the heart of Claudio Lysias, this Roman patrician who has a very great influence in Jerusalem, in the Roman Empire. And from then on, we're going to see that he's protecting Paul every step of the way, because he sees in an immortal dialogue, he's not a criminal. He says, so you're not a criminal, so who are you? I am just following the Christ. But they don't like it. So from then on, we're going to see that thanks to this Roman man, he is going to be seen by higher authorities until Paul of Tarsus is presented to the emperor of the time. And at that moment, we have more lessons. Do you think Paul of Tarsus is going to back down and say, oh, please, authority, forgive me, I was just creating commotion? No, he turns to him, explains things, and says to the very emperor, you don't know exactly what I'm talking about yet, but one day you will. He's very courageous, very brave, courageous and brave. Are we like this? Do we stand up for our convictions in life, or do we back down, afraid that people are not going to accept us? Did you know that that's the main reason why the teachings of the good in the world travel so slowly? Because people, one, they are not convinced. And when they are not converted. And two, when they are convinced, because they are not yet converted to the teachings, then they are not coherent. In our incoherence, our closest loved ones do not embrace what we embrace. How often we have a family member, a spouse, that does not share our understanding. And instead of keeping on our march without words, just example, we back down. We run away from our very convictions because we cannot convince anybody. Of course, we're not even converted. How we're going to convince anybody? Our example is lacking. No wonder those loved ones do not join in. So in that regard, we're going to see Paul of Tarsus being so firm in his conviction that the emperor feels some lack of goodwill to help him out. He says, I have no reason to kill you, but I'm going to let you stay there in prison while I meditate what to do. So then Paul of Tarsus stays there for 2 years. He is visited by his family member, Delilah, his nephew, and at some point his nephew comes and says that the Pharisees are planning a major execution of Paul of Tarsus. Claudius Lysias, the Roman influential person who is taking care of him, gets to know of it and decides to go back to the emperor and say, can we just finalize it? And he says, yes, he's going to be judged in Rome. Finally, he's going to go to Rome. Yes, the capital of the Roman Empire. And he's being prepared, Paul of Tarsus, for the greatest chapter of his life. Every person he meets, he shares what he knows. Why? Because he lives his life based on this. Today, we're going to finalize this chapter 8 by asking ourselves, because it's not about knowledge. It's about understanding, as Paul of Tarsus got to know. Am I convinced about the reality of life, the Spiritist teachings? And if I am I truly converted? Meaning, am I modifying my life to adjust myself to what I came to understand and know? Or am I still in this tormented, conflicted life? Let's meditate on this, friends, because this study is the inner journey with Paul and Stephen. Let's not forget that we always have good spirits around us, like Paul had Abigail and Stephen, guided by the Christ, to guide Paul of Tarsus. You and I also have spirit guides that are under the tutelage of the Christ on earth to help us progress. Are we convinced? And if we are we already converted? Let us stop here now and rejoice. Rejoice as you and I meditate on our inner journey, a journey for immortality. If you have any question, friends, write to us at cardiacradio@gmail.com. For now, we wish you many blessings.